Hey guys, in this video, I want to show you some of my favorite tofu recipes that I know you'll love. I think I'll make this into a series, so make sure you subscribe for future videos like this, and all the written recipes and timestamps for each recipe will be linked below in the description for you. If you enjoy this, give this video a thumbs up and check out my recipes ebooks that'll be linked below as well. Let's get started. I want to show you how to make vegan spam musubi. First, of course, we gotta make our vegan spam. First thing we're gonna need is a block of extra firm tofu. You want to slice up your tofu into thin rectangular pieces like so. I'm just taking off the corners and kind of trying to round the corners to make it look a little bit more like spam. Then into a bowl, we're going to mix together the marinade. So we're going to mix together some soy sauce or soy sauce alternative. We also want to add some maple syrup, liquid smoke, mirin, which is a Japanese sweet rice wine. And if you don't have mirin, you can use rice vinegar. I'm also going to add some garlic powder, ground ginger, and water. Then we just want to mix this well, and that's going to be our marinade. It's super simple. So I like to usually marinate the tofu about 15 minutes on one side, and then I flip it over and do another 15 minutes. But if you can do this overnight, I feel like obviously it would be even better. That's up to you. So that's how I made the marinade, and I've been marinating this now for, I don't know, at least an hour or so. Obviously, if you want, you can actually marinate this overnight. You can do whatever you want. So I actually moved the tofu into a bigger, kind of wider tray so I could just lay it all out in one single file. We have two options. You could actually make this in an oven, so you could bake it, but for time's sake, I'm going to actually pan fry this, okay? So if you want to know how I bake it in the oven, I'll link my original vegan spam video down below, but I'm just going to make it on the pan. So let's get started. So I'm heating up this pan. I'm just gonna add a bit of oil. You can add a little bit, a lot, do whatever you want, okay? Just enough. This is a non-stick pan, so we don't need too much oil. And now we can add our lovely pieces of vegan spam, okay? I always try to make recipes where, you know, the ingredients are more accessible. So we're gonna cook this up. As you can see, we have these pieces. It looks nice and marinated, but we're gonna save this marinade, okay? Don't throw this away yet. So I like to cook it up for like, I don't know, a couple of minutes on each side. Then we're gonna flip it over. It's starting to kind of, you know, look all nice and caramelized, okay? So now what I like to do, again, we're gonna cook it for maybe a couple minutes, and then I pour the marinade on top, like the leftover marinade, and that way it's gonna become even more flavorful and delicious. Just gonna, ooh, on top of each piece. See? Look how much marinade is left. So because the sauce is nice and sweet, it will caramelize nicely. Just be careful not to burn it. Maybe the heat, you want it to have it a little bit, maybe lower heat. Now I call this recipe my vegan spam / smoked tofu recipe. So if you can't find yourself smoked tofu, you could also make this. You could do a lot with this recipe. It just is a nice little thing to make to meal prep maybe in the beginning of the week, and you can use it as your protein. So we're just gonna like just let it kind of cook in this marinade, let that thicken up, and then we can actually put it all together. We can now prepare the rice. By the way, all of the measurements and everything will be in a blog post down below, so check that out. And this is very important, but you want to make sure you use sushi rice. You don't want to use any other type of rice. Use a sushi or short grain rice. And now you need this. This is nori. I've seen is most people cut it up into threes. So you want to cut it up into 3 pieces with your kitchen scissors. So first thing we're gonna need is, I like to keep a little bowl of water in front of me just to dampen my hands because the sushi rice gets sticky. So the dampening of the hands will help with the stickiness. So we have that, and then I have this 1/3 cup right here, which I'm also gonna dampen. I'm assuming one will be around 1/3 cups, let's just say, okay? So let's just take about a 1/3 cup of the rice into our dampened hands, and then I'm just gonna kind of shape it. So as you can see, it's nice and sticky. So it's easy to work with in terms of like shaping it and molding it. So I'm kind of like playing around with the shape here to make it nice and slightly, like, what do you call it? Like a oval / rectangular shape. And then we're gonna take a piece of spam. Oh, look at that. Already it's looking pretty. And then what are we gonna do? Lay out the piece of spam thing. Then we lay out our little piece of rice. Then we just fold it over, okay? And you can either put a few pieces of rice to seal, or you can add a little bit of water. That's what I like to do. We are making an absolutely delicious sweet and sour tofu stir fry. This goes perfectly with rice, so make sure you cook up some rice to go with this. First, we're gonna make a healthier version of sweet and sour sauce. Place a pot or a saucepan on the stove on medium-high heat and add some apple cider vinegar, or you can use rice vinegar. Next, add the juice from a can of pineapple. You can save some of the pineapple to add into the stir fry later. Obviously, don't throw away the pineapple, okay? Now we can add brown sugar, ketchup, soy sauce, or you can use a gluten-free alternative, and then you want to mix this well. I ended up going in with a whisk to mix. So we're gonna bring this to a boil, and in the meantime, we need to quickly make a starch slurry. In a small bowl, whisk together some cornstarch and water, and then once the sauce comes to a boil, turn the heat low and stir in the starch slurry and simmer on low until the sauce thickens. And there's our sweet and sour sauce. Now let's prepare our tofu. I cut up some extra firm tofu into bite-sized cubes, and I'm gonna coat the pieces with some cornstarch. Then heat some oil on a large non-stick wok or a pan, preferably a wok, and let's cook up our tofu. Try not to have the pieces touching each other too much, as the starch will stick them together. I like to cook it until the pieces get slightly golden and a little crispy, so just flip it around a few times and just cook them until your liking. Once that's done, set the tofu aside, and in the same pan or wok, add a little more oil, and let's cook up some onions that I cut into chunks, along with some minced garlic and grated ginger. The ginger part is optional, but delicious. And I also added some sliced carrots at this stage, because carrots take a while to cook. So cook that for a few minutes, allowing the onions to soften, and then we can add the rest of our veggies. I'm using broccoli, bell pepper, and celery. And I also added some frozen edamame beans to bump up the protein on this dish a little bit more. And I like to add in a little pinch of salt while the veggies are cooking. And once they're cooked, you can add that tofu back in along with that yummy sauce. Don't add all the sauce at first, but maybe a little bit at a time so you can adjust the level of sauce that you want. You might end up using it all, or maybe a little bit less. And now I'm just adding in some of that pineapple into this stir fry as well. I guess I bought some sort of grated pineapple rather than chunks. Oh well, it was still delicious. So I added that in, and then I also added some salt and pepper to taste. And there you go. Here is basically a healthy, delicious takeout dish, sweet and sour tofu stir fry. This is actually so good, you guys. Make sure you enjoy this with a healthy serving of rice. Say it with me, guys. Sundubu Jjigae, also known as soft tofu stew. We're gonna start off by making some delicious umami broth by boiling together some water with dried kelp and dry shiitake mushroom. If you don't have kelp or you don't have dry shiitake mushroom, I will have some substitute options that are written in the blog, so check that out, linked down below. So I like to boil that on medium-high heat for at least 15 to 20 minutes to really let the flavors soak in. And in the meantime, you can chop up whatever else you need. Now, I really like to use mushrooms for this dish, and especially king oyster mushrooms. So I'm just gonna dice up some king oyster mushrooms. But of course, if you don't like mushrooms, you can substitute it for something else or use a different kind of mushroom if you can't find king oyster. Next thing I like to also add is some zucchini, so I'm also going to dice up the zucchini as well. I also prepared some diced onion and minced garlic as well. Now let's check up on our broth. So after about 15 to 20 minutes, our broth should be ready. So what I like to do is take out the kelp pieces and the mushroom, and I'm actually going to throw in the mushrooms into the soup. So I'm just going to dice up the shiitake mushroom as well. And I also save the kelp pieces to either just like eat later or you can throw it into the soup as well, because it's healthy and I don't like to waste food. But it's up to you. You can throw it into the compost if you don't like the texture or the taste. Anyways, let's start making our stew. Now into a large pot or wok on medium or medium-high heat, I'm going to add in some toasted sesame oil along with the onion, garlic, and some gochugaru, which is Korean red chili pepper flakes or chili pepper powder. I believe that the toasted sesame oil along with the chili powder, it kind of creates almost like a chili
chili oil, but some people commented last time saying that I shouldn't be cooking with toasted sesame oil. Anyway, not sure what the answer is, but this is how I was taught to do it, so this is how I'm gonna do it, okay? If you want, you can just cook with regular vegetable oil and then add in toasted sesame oil at the end, okay? So after sauteing that for a little bit, we can add a little bit of that broth in here. Then let's add in our mushrooms and our zucchini. And let's simply add in the rest of our broth and the shiitake mushrooms that we chopped up. And we're gonna bring this to a boil, and while we bring it to a boil, we can open up our tofu. So I'm using extra soft tofu. In Korean, this is called sun tofu, and that's another reason why this dish is called Sundubu Jjigae, because Sundubu is soft tofu in Korean. Interesting, I know. So you don't have to use the extra soft tofu that comes in these little tubes, but I would recommend it if you can find it in the Korean or Asian supermarket. If you can't find these, you can just use regular soft tofu. So I like to just cut it up a little bit. This is very, very soft, so like it's gonna break, okay? It's not your fault. Now I like to carefully cut it up, but you really don't have to. You can just literally just throw it into the pot and just break it up with your spoon, which is probably what I would normally do. So just add in your extra soft tofu. You can break it up a little bit with your spoon. I like to have some chunks in there so I don't break it up too much. And at this point, I like to add some salt. Now I would add salt to taste. So give the broth a taste and then just add a little bit of salt, taste it, add more as you need. And then I like to also add lots of green onion in this dish. I love lots of green onion in here, so feel free to add as much green onion as you want. And then of course bring this to a boil, and as long as the veggies are all cooked, it's pretty much finished. And of course you gotta serve this really hot with a bowl of rice, okay? Korean people, we like our stews piping hot, like it's gotta burn your mouth, okay? So serve it hot with a bowl of rice and enjoy. Cheers. Tastes like my childhood. You gotta eat it with a big bowl of rice. So the next recipe is going to be a buffalo chicken sandwich, but hold the chicken because we're gonna use tofu instead. And I promise you, this is seriously going to remind you of a buffalo chicken sandwich. It is delicious. It is so good. Highly recommend, okay? So first, we're going to mix together the dry ingredients on a plate. So we're gonna add in some flour, cornstarch, garlic powder, onion powder, smoked or regular paprika. We're also going to add black pepper and salt. We're gonna mix this well, and that's gonna be our little dry coating. And then in a separate little plate or bowl, we're going to whisk together the wet ingredients. So we're gonna start with some unsweetened non-dairy milk. I'm using almond milk here. And we're also gonna add some apple cider vinegar, vegan buffalo or hot sauce. I always just use Frank's red hot sauce. And then we're also going to add in some flour. We're gonna whisk this to create the wet batter. So now we have a dry mix and a wet mix. Yay, okay? So now we're gonna heat some oil on a nonstick pan on medium-high heat. While that's heating up, you can cut up your tofu into patties like so. I cut basically a block of extra from tofu into 6 patties. So what we want to do is dip the tofu into the dry mixture to coat first. Then you want to coat it in the wet mixture and let the excess kind of, drip off a little bit. And then you want to coat it again in the dry mixture. So we're doing 3 coats: dry, wet, dry, okay? Now we have our patties. They are ready to go. So now the oil should be heated, and now we just add our patties, and we are just going to cook these for a few minutes on each side. And in the meantime, we can make a quick coleslaw sort of thing. Okay, I don't even know if this is called a coleslaw, but I'm just using shredded cabbage. You can also use just a store-bought coleslaw mix, which is already pre-chopped and ready to go. So I'm just gonna add the cabbage into a bowl along with some vegan mayo, Dijon mustard, a pinch of salt, and a pinch of sugar. And we're just gonna mix this well. If you don't want to do this, you can literally just use like lettuce or add whatever you want into the burger. It's obviously optional. Now we're going to flip the patty around. I like to do it a few times just to cook them to my liking. And then you want to turn the heat off at the end. And then let's throw in plenty of vegan buffalo sauce. Once again, I'm just using Frank's red hot sauce. So I just like to flip these around a few times just to make sure it's nicely coated. And then that's it, okay? Now on a burger bun, we can add some vegan mayo. Then I'm going to top with some pickles. And then we're going to place our delicious buffalo tofu, and then we can add our little coleslaw mix. Then close this up, and there you have it. There is your delicious vegan version of a buffalo chicken sandwich. And I have fed this to people, guys. I have fed this to my family. it was very popular. All right, guys, time to try the burger. I'm sorry, but that is delicious. Oil-free tofu ricotta recipe. So here it is. I've shown you guys this countless times, but if you're new here, here it is. All you have to do, guys, is to add into a food processor some extra firm tofu, some lemon juice, nutritional yeast, salt, dry basil, and garlic powder. And then we're just going to blend it until it is nice and smooth, and be patient. It might take up to a minute. You might have to scrape down the sides a little bit, but it will get there. I do always use a food processor for this, but you can use a blender. You may just have to scrape it a few more times. And then you are basically done. There's so many things you could use this for, and it is so good. I always use this for lasagna, and it is thebomb.com. Are we allowed to say that still? And you can store this in the fridge for up to 4 to 5 days. You can even freeze it if you don't end up using it in time. And now that we have a ricotta ready, we can make our toast. So just toast your toast, toast your bread, and I spread mine with a generous layer of that ricotta. And I decided to add some roasted red bell peppers. Okay, so I'm just gonna slice them up a little bit just to make sure they fit on the toast. I don't know. And I also decided to add some grape tomatoes, so I'm just going to slice those in half as well. And then we're just gonna simply top our ricotta toast with the roasted peppers and just top with the tomatoes. That's it. It's so easy. You can even add olives on top if you want. And I also topped with some fresh parsley, although I think basil would have been better with this, but I was too cheap to buy fresh basil for just this recipe. And I still had a ton of parsley, so parsley's good.
Today, you guys, I want to make some vegan California rolls. So the first method is going to be using extra firm tofu. Okay, this is the method that I have in my Everyday Asian Recipes ebook. I love this recipe. It is delicious. So what we do is we take some extra firm tofu. I'm just going to cut it. I think we only need about a quarter. And what we do is we grate it. So we need a little cheese grater situation. We just grate it, okay? So that we're having these little shreds. Okay, we have shreds, if you can see here. So grate. So this is why you need to use extra firm tofu, because I feel like if you use anything else, it'll kind of like just break. I mean, to be honest, you could just crumble it, but I think this texture definitely makes a difference. So yeah, texture is very important, guys, in food. Texture is very, very important in food. So now we just add this into a mixing bowl. Okay. We're gonna add in some vegan mayo. So we're gonna just throw that in, and we're also gonna need some salt. You can also use like garlic powder, garlic salt. I'm keeping it relatively simple today. And then we just mix it, okay? And you would be surprised at how yummy this is, okay? My mom actually makes this a lot, and a lot of people are like, oh my God, I can't believe it's tofu. Also some sriracha if you want like a spicy crab mayo situation. But really, we're keeping it super simple. I'm just gonna give this a taste, see what it's like. Just that alone is delicious. Now, guys, let's prepare our rice. Yes, we're making California rolls. So I have here sushi rice, short grain rice. You have to use sushi rice or short grain rice. That is the sticky rice, okay? We're looking for Korean, Japanese, short grain sushi rice, okay? If you use anything else, it is not going to stick together, okay? So we have short grain rice. It's already cooked. It's cooled down a bit. It's kind of at room temperature. Take a mixing bowl, okay? And then we are going to add our rice, okay? We're gonna add in some rice vinegar and then just a little bit of salt and sugar. I don't like my sushi rice to be super sweet, but it's up to you if you want it to be a little bit sweeter. And then we just mix it, okay? Now let's make the California roll. Seaweed on the inside, meaning the rice on the outside. This one's a little bit more tricky. So what you need is a nori sheet, but for the seaweed on the outside, you want to cut it in half, okay? You don't need the full nori sheet, so you can use either scissors, just fold it, or rip it. I literally just have one nori sheet left, you guys. So if I screw this up, that's what you're gonna get. Again, we want to have that rough part on the inside. We want to dampen our hands just a little bit. Add in our sushi rice. Now we put some sesame seeds, sprinkle that on, maybe a little bit more. Can be generous. Just gonna press that down. And then I wanna take that nori carefully just Plop it down. Okay. There we go. Let's start with our avocado. Now I'm gonna cut it a little bit thicker. Okay, avocado. Now our tofu crab meat. Okay. Imitation crab meat. Here we go, here we go. Okay, so I'm just gonna like press it down, okay? Okay, so now, let me just brace myself. Okay, let me just get myself ready. Oh, okay. Now, we want to roll over, and I may have overfilled it. Press it. I may have overfilled it again, so maybe don't fill it too much. And now, we're going to simply get rid of the saran wrap. And now, very carefully, slowly, coat it up. Okay, I mean, it's not the prettiest, okay? But I've seen uglier at some sushi restaurants, so. Now, look at this. Okay, it's, you know, it's cute. All right, you guys, time to try.
For more delicious tofu recipes, make sure you check out my playlist that's linked down below. I also have recipes ebooks that are available on my website, which will be linked below as well. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and if you want to see more videos like this. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!